Well, what do you think of the attempted assassination of Trump?
We don't know the story.
Yeah.
It's absolutely shocking. We don't know the story. And whether we ever will know the story is like so many other things right now that are huge events. We talked briefly about COVID. You know, I think it came out of a lab. That's one of the biggest events in history. Oh, that's so passé. Who wants to talk about that anymore? Assassination attempt on Trump. Isn't that weeks ago? That's that's old news. We don't even talk about that anymore. Blowing up Nord Stream, some cockamamie story. Yeah, a few people in a sailboat. Oh, it was Ukrainians. Oh, it was this. Oh, it was, this is we have no attention span. We have complete lying from the government. We have secrecy and confidentiality. So we never actually resolve any of these issues because it's very hard to have a systematic, methodical discussion where one discusses and then where there's a response. The thing that gets me about Washington is they don't feel they have to respond to anything. And you watch the spokespeople, Matt Miller at the State Department or Kirby in the White House, they smirk right in your face to tell you, you are nothing. We can tell anything to you. Do you understand? I mean, that's my interpretation.
I agree.
They smirk.
The contempt they have for the people who pay their salaries, who own this country, is shocking.
For the salary they pay, can't they get the smirk off their face? You know,
it would be like getting spit at by your housekeeper.
No,
I'm sorry, you're fired now.
No. It's exactly, you see it, that they know that they have the little laugh at the end. So it's the carefree lie. But we're talking about absolutely essential issues. And that's what's missing in our discussion right now. And it is closed down systematically if you try. If you just can't discuss the things.
Can I take it? I have trouble staying on track as well. There's so many questions, but just back to Durov, Pavel Durov, in jail in France right now. Is there any chance the Macron government arrested him without coordination from the Biden administration?
Probably not. I think the network that people should understand, again, it's not exactly out there to go read off the shelf how it works, but the intelligence agencies are a network in and of themselves. So whether Blinken knew about this beforehand, I don't know. Did the CIA know about this? Far more likely. It's interesting when you look, for example, at negotiations, these endless, hopeless negotiations on a ceasefire in Gaza. Hopeless, by the way, because of Israeli absolute lack of interest in a ceasefire, just to say that. But when you look at when the negotiations take place, who goes? You would think it might be our diplomats. No, it's the CIA and Mossad. It's a little weird. Those are quote unquote intelligence agencies. They're doing the negotiations. That part's not hidden because you have to say, okay, Mossad and the CIA and Hamas counterparts.
Why would CIA, so as if it's its own government, or
as if it's the leader of our foreign policy? Exactly.
I thought CIA was by charter an intelligence gathering agency.
By charter, it is two things, by the way, literally by charter. It is an intelligence gathering agency and it is any other mission. That is exactly how it became the covert operations enterprise. And one more thing I think that is worth pointing out, by the way, about the CIA, because we should take note of it. There has been one and only one congressional review of the CIA, and that was 49 years ago.
1975.
Next year will be the 50th anniversary of the Church Committee. And maybe President Trump and Vice President Vance, if they're in power, maybe they would call for another congressional
Trump in his intro of Bobby Kennedy on this past Friday, when Kennedy endorsed him, said that he would like a commission to look into the CIA's involvement or look into the Kennedy assassination.
It's interesting. It was a very strange confluence that allowed that one time for the CIA to be looked into, because Nixon had resigned. Ford was president, but had come directly from Congress. And so Ford had this sense in 1975 that he wasn't, a directly elected president, and he respected Congress because he really came from Congress. So he actually told his chief of staff, who was Dick Cheney, let this happen, because Cheney was trying to close down Church and probably could have closed down the Church Commission. But there was this odd confluence that enabled this tiny moment when the CIA operations could be reviewed. When they lifted the cover, it was horror after horror after horror, because when Church started, he didn't know that he was going to uncover a plethora of assassinations and assassination attempts and mass surveillance of the U.S. public and regime change operations and many other things. Well, that cover was put back down. As Bobby said in your interview with him, those committees in Congress that are, quote unquote, overseeing the CIA are the protectors to make sure that no one looks right now. But it's been 50 years, a half a century, since we've had an account of what has really gone on. Well, I see things. I don't like what I see, and I don't see them because, I'm because somehow it's my area of knowledge or responsibility. I see them on the side, like when the president of Haiti told me one day, Jeff, they're gonna kill me. They're gonna take me away. And I said, no. And I thought he was being figurative and metaphorical. And I said, no, everything's going to be all right. I'm going to help you get this loan, blah, 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 blah. Of course, the upshot of it was, as usual, I was naive, and they took Aristide out to an unmarked CIA plane one day as president of Haiti and flew him to the Central African Republic and deposed him. And deposed him literally in broad daylight. I mean, it was the middle of the day, and the U.S. ambassador walked him out to this unmarked plane. But the interesting story for me was that I called, since I was an economic advisor a little bit and a friend, and don't like presidents getting taken out to CIA unmarked planes and flown to center of Africa, I called the reporter on the beat of the New York Times. And I said to her, could you cover this story? There's just been a coup. She said to me, my editor's not interested. My editor's not interested. That's a literal quote, because my jaw dropped, so stunned, even the phrasing of it. But the New York Times would not cover a coup in broad daylight by the CIA in Haiti when it occurred. Why
do you think that is?
Because these are organizations that serve the American power structure, and they are both suborned by them because they get their information from the CIA. They probably have, literal people on staff that are part of the USG in one way, and their sources and everything else, and they view it as patriotic also when the government says not a good thing to handle, and so they don't view themselves as the defenders of democracy. They view themselves as the defenders of the permanent state, and they absolutely do.
So you think that the intel agencies play a role in shaping news coverage?
Well, I think that there's no question at all. Some places are just literal mouthpieces of the CIA. And I don't think anyone doubts that the Washington Post is just the place where the CIA issues its statements. Sometimes, by the way, helpful, because sometimes the intelligence community wants the public to understand something.
That's right.
So it's not all wrong or all misinformation.
No, that's absolutely true.
Yeah, but of course, that is the place to go to hear what the CIA says.
And the Wall Street Journal too.
Yeah, it's not subtle. It's not even close. What's amazing, though, is that any counter narrative, there's no room for that in any of these papers.
So then you have the CIA or the whole panoply of agencies, but acting not simply as sources, but really as masters, like they're controlling the coverage.
The idea is, as you know, I think the most important cliched word is the narrative. There needs to be a story. They control the narrative. It's like Orwell told us, he who controls the past controls the present, who controls the present controls the future. They have to shape the past. They have to define everything. They need their narrative. And that's what these mainstream outlets do, is have their narrative. They have completely lost the idea of even one time saying, well, there's this argument, and then there's the argument on the other side, and perhaps having competing columns or trying to understand this. I think we talked last time. I tried to get 700 words in the New York Times. I got up to the point where they actually edited my piece before they killed it, but they would not run a 700-word story from someone who knows, I think, about as much about the Ukraine crisis going back for more than 30 years as I'd say most of the people that write for them. And they're not interested in any other side. There's a narrative. And so that is how it works. The narrative does not have to be believable, by the way. Most of the time, it's not believed.
Russia blew up the Nord Stream pipeline.
The Warren Commission was not believed by the American people. Most Americans believe that there was a lab leak that caused the pandemic. Most Americans, I would suppose, believe that the U.S. blew up Nord Stream, or certainly had its role in it. So these narratives are not believed, but they buy enough time that the attention goes away and you get onto something else. It's just a way to make sure that there's no need to answer anything, no accountability. That's what this is about, not convincing people of outlandishly weird stories. The lone gunman who killed President Kennedy when everyone's pointing in another direction, and the count of the bullets says something else, and blah, blah, blah. No, you don't have to believe it, but you need to be able to say something for long enough that something else comes up and that you stop talking about the previous thing. And it's extremely dangerous, because what it means is that beneath that, it's not to convince people, it's to have the ability to do what you want to do and know that you won't be held accountable for it.